So hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Draker, and I am the program manager with WorkInCulture, where I oversee our various projects and professional development initiatives in support of cultural workers and artists of all types. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today for our session on providing an overview of the arts and culture sector and career opportunities for newcomers, a part of our Working in the Arts program. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues from WorkInCulture, Diane and Davy, our executive director, who will be presenting today and moderating our panel with our guest speakers, as well as my colleague, Maggie Stokes, our project support assistant, who's assisting me today with our tech support and who is looking forward to engaging with you in the chat box. We're offering closed captioning today for this session, and you can either follow along in a separate browser by clicking on the Otter AI icon at the top left corner of this Zoom screen, or we can enable closed captioning within Zoom itself. And just to note that we are recording today's session and we'll be publishing the video to our website and YouTube page for continued access and sharing after the fact. And since we're recording, we've opted to hold off on taking any questions until the end of the session, at which time we'll turn off the recording so that any of your questions are not publicly shared. But in the meantime, you're welcome to engage in the chat box. And if a question does come to mind as any of our guest speakers are speaking, you can certainly enter it into the chat, and my colleague Naomi will be keeping track. Now, before we dive in, I did want to share a little bit more about WorkInCulture for those of you who are new to us. So we are a nonprofit art service organization focused on supporting the career development of people who work in the arts. We work in support of all disciplines and creative practices. And most people know us for our job board, but we do so much more than that. We conduct workforce research, we create and host career resources on our website, and we develop and adapt and deliver training such as the program that you are part of today. We do this work throughout Ontario, giving us an opportunity to connect with people in many different regions, communities, and territories. But our office and our core team, including Diane and Naomi and myself, are all joining you today from the meeting place of Toronto, or Toronto, which of course for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And today is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. And while many of those on the webinar are joining us from the same territory, we are grateful to have the opportunity to connect with people from across Turtle Island through these virtual types of sessions. And if you are joining us from a different region, you're welcome to share and acknowledge it in the chat box if you'd like. So a little bit more about the program that you're joining us for today. So Working in the Arts, Resources and Pathways for Newcomers is a new series of training sessions and access to information and resources that we're developing and curating to help support newcomer and immigrant artists and arts professionals achieve career success in Toronto and the GTA and beyond. This is a pilot program funded by Canada Council for the Arts, and it's been informed by a needs assessment that we conducted a few years ago called Navigating a Career in the Arts for Newcomers, where we explored the barriers and opportunities faced by new Canadians looking to start or expand their creative careers in Canada.
Steph?
So through this program, yes, sorry.
Hi, I'm sorry. I think a couple of people can't hear very well. So can we, is everybody's audio okay? Can you hear Steph all right?
Yes. Okay, I can try to speak a little bit louder if that's helpful. Yes, okay.
And slowly, please.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so as I was saying, through this project, we're looking to respond to knowledge gaps that may exist among the primary communities listed on this slide. So that being settlement services, other arts organizations, and of course, newcomer and immigrant communities themselves. And we hope that our training series and additional resources that we're collecting will provide a good baseline of understanding. So on that note, you can follow along on our website as we continue to populate our program page with upcoming webinars that you can register for, additional recordings, resources, and interviews. And additionally, we're eager to get your feedback on today's session and also on the type of information that can help support you in finding or communicating career opportunities and resources in the arts. So at the end of the session, we will ask folks to complete a feedback form, and Naomi will share a link to that in the chat now and also later if you'd like to have it handy for when we end our time together. Okay, so now on to today's session. I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce our guest speakers for today. So they include, of course, Diane Davy, Executive Director of WorkInCulture. And then we have Yazmeen and Kanji from BIPOC TV and Film, their Advocacy and Outreach Lead. Also, Jacoba Knaapen, Executive Director of Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts, or TAPA. And Flora, Shum, Outreach Coordinator for CARFAC, Ontario. In terms of agenda, we will start with Diane, who will be leading us through a short presentation about the career landscape of the arts and culture sector. And then Jacoba, Yazmeen, and Flora will each provide an overview of their organizations, resources, and offerings. Then Diane will lead our panelists through a panel discussion specific to opportunities and other considerations when it comes to engaging with the newcomer community. And then, as mentioned earlier, we'll open up the floor to questions from the audience. So I think that is enough from me. So without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to Diane.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steph. And thank you to our panelists, Jacoba, Yazmeen, and Flora. We're thrilled to have you. And thank you to the audience. It's terrific to see so many people here with us today. Before we plunge into the actual panel discussion, I wanted to talk briefly about the big picture. What do we mean by the arts and culture sector? WorkInCulture itself is mandated to serve the entire sector. So that's what's up on the screen, individuals across all disciplines and both nonprofit arts and arts service organizations and for-profit cultural industries, which includes book publishing, magazine publishing, music, film, interactive, including gaming, as well as heritage museums and libraries. And it is, as you can see, it also embraces in sort of the peripheries of the community, government agencies, funders, philanthropic foundations, academic institutions. They all make up part of the broader ecosystem. So that we target the whole thing. Several of my colleagues here today will dive in more deeply into specific disciplines. And according to WorkInCulture's own research, the 2019, just before the pandemic, Making It Work report, that's over 274,000 artists, creatives, and cultural workers in Ontario alone, obviously much more across the country. So it is a large and impactful sector. And I mean that both economically and socially. Our guests today will drill down into some of the specifics of their areas of focus, but I wanted to start by reminding our audience that there's lots of room and need for newcomer artists and arts workers who reflect the vitality and diversity of our communities. Next slide, please. This next slide is a more visual representation. I mentioned that we cover all disciplines, so that's everybody: music, dance, theater, the cultural industries, heritage museums and libraries, multidisciplinary arts, and media. Many of the creators in the sector and workers in the sector work across many areas. The gig economy tends to mean that you're working in more than one job at any given time. So an actor might work in a commercial that's for a for-profit company. They might also then the next night work in a nonprofit theater production. According to the Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, one of the funders who is supportive of our community and important in our community, arts and culture in Ontario directly contributes $27 billion annually to the provincial economy, and that represents 3.4% of Ontario GDP and 3.8% of total Ontario employment. So that's a look at the big picture of the sector. Next slide, please. It's a big and it's a varied sector, and there are lots of jobs, but what are they? About 2 weeks ago, Naomi and I were on a panel, and the moderator there asked us what myth in the sector would we like to debunk. And Naomi said that for her, being new to the sector, it was that you had to be an artist to be in the arts. And she had a passion for the arts, but not a particular talent in terms of design or drawing or music or the like. But she was very pleased to find that there are lots of jobs that don't require you being an artist yourself. However, I think that's a misconception a lot of people have. Now, obviously, at the heart and soul of the sector, there are the creators, and that is always important to remember. But creators themselves are entrepreneurs. An individual artist, a visual artist, a dancer, a musician, really is running their own small business. So even within a creator, there are a variety of jobs. But the range of opportunities goes way, way beyond that. The art service organizations, such as the ones that are here today, museums, heritage, cultural industry companies need administrators and accountants and marketers and data analysts, fundraisers, and many, many more. Lots of jobs that I don't think on first blush many people think about in terms of the sector. And I'm going to refer you to the WorkInCulture job board, shameless plug here. Stephanie mentioned it, but it is an incredibly good resource to see the range of jobs, where they are, and it also includes salary ranges. So it tells you the sort of salaries that you can expect for jobs. When I think about it, even within WorkInCulture itself, we have people focusing on areas like strategic planning, financial management, marketing, project management, event planning, evaluation, reporting, revenue generation, and that's just us. We're a 5-person operation, but you can see there's a wide range of jobs. Next slide, please. I love these word clouds. I think this represents how difficult it can be to understand exactly what is involved in various roles, particularly as various disciplines use their own terminology in terms of job titles. Part of my background is book publishing. And I suspect most people understand what an editor is, but they may not understand the specifics for being an acquisitions editor versus a copy editor versus a managing editor. So there's actual language involved in determining what the jobs are. And that's why we want a program like this to help strengthen the ties between the arts and culture sector and newcomers and the organizations that serve them, in order to help streamline the pathway to a career that matches newcomer artists' experience and goals. Next slide, please. So it's a big sector, there's lots of jobs. Now, what about transferable skills? I think sometimes if we've had a strong arts education, we're not sure where we might fit into some of the roles that we might be interested in. Well, we hear time and again that there are a need for tech skills, but also combined with soft skills. And that's an area where I think arts training makes people shine. And the demand reaches not only through the arts sector itself, but also into other employment areas. And as I mentioned, many people in the sector bridge between many jobs. For example, a graphic artist might work in an insurance company. So it's not just the arts sector. In fact, the filter that we use for our job board is not a bad way of looking at it. We curate the board, so any job in the arts and culture sector is acceptable for posting. So that you could be an accountant for a theater company, or you could be the graphic artist, the job of the graphic artist in the insurance company. That's the kind of filter that we use. I think it's important to recognize the range of opportunities, because that can open your thinking and open doors for people. I once worked with a woman who was an actor, and she was offered a job in a hospital where she would pretend to be a patient with a variety of symptoms provided obviously by the medical team. And she worked with student doctors, and they had to question her and determine what her particular diagnosis was. But I thought that was fascinating. Who would have thought that an actor would be working in medical training? Next slide, please. It's important, I think, and we want to help people find their transferable skills. The center big circle that we have here kind of lists out in sort of generic terminology a whole bunch of transferable skills. If you look at it, you can see that even like an individual artist, a visual artist, if you're a successful visual artist, you're going to have project management skills. You're going to have customer service skills, marketing and communication skills. And we want to help people be able to identify their transferable skills, working right from the time of their earlier education, right through to any work experience they have, whether or not it's related to the arts community or not, and pull those together into profiles that allow them to access the jobs that they want to find. And building that profile for yourself related to your job requirements, I think is an important first step in moving you along to the goals that you want. Okay, next slide, please. So we know that the arts and culture sector is big, it's impactful, it has lots of job opportunities, and that newcomer artists have lots of skills, desirable skills and experience that are needed by the community. Now I want to hear from our panelists who are going to dive more deeply into specific areas of the sector. And I'd like to start, each of our panelists is going to provide an overview of their organization, and then we're going to have a series of questions that delve into particular newcomer programs that they might be offering. And I'm going to start with you, Jacoba. Over to you, Jacoba.
Thank you so much, Diane. And thank you so much to WorkInCulture for being such an incredible organization that effectively reaches such a diverse population of people. As Diane just referenced, the numbers are pretty impressive, and the numbers do help to tell the story across the sector for all of us. We're in the process of emerging from a pandemic. And I think that needs to be always said out loud, because are we really fully recovered from the pandemic? We are still grappling with a lot of factors in our health systems around access to support for arts and culture organizations who might be in the process of reopening, but they're not necessarily recovered. We like to say TAPA, that reopening is not recovery. So my pronouns are she and her. I'm coming to you from Takaranto, where the trees meet the water. We are located here in the 401 Richmond building, and I'm wrapped up, and you may see me wrapping up more and more because I'm in an old heritage building with single pane glass, and the heating, it's -7 today, and the heating isn't always coming through. I have curly blonde hair, gray blonde hair. I'm wearing glasses. I'm an older person between my 50s and 60s, and I am a white Caucasian cisgendered woman. I am the executive director of TAPA, which is the Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts. And for today, I'm going to be calling us TAPA, which is our acronym. I will screen share at this point a little bit about who we are and what it is that TAPA does. As an arts service organization, we serve membership, and our membership ranges from professional theater, dance, and opera companies that are not for profit, as well as professional theater, dance, and opera companies that are commercial organizations. So the ecosystem here in Toronto, before the pandemic, we had 184 professional theater, dance, and opera members, and now we have 82. So I think that those numbers are quite alarming, and they do help to tell the story in terms of what is happening in our recovery. So in terms of our snapshot, we created, and I'm referring to COVID again, because we created a COVID-19 pandemic toolkit. And the toolkit was a really important part of helping our members to navigate this new reality that there was no playbook for. And it was instrumental in capturing the changes that they needed to deal with. We provided numbers through 2 impact surveys that also told the story and revealed the extraordinary setbacks that our members encountered. And what those numbers told us at the time of those surveys, that we lost audience members in excess of 4 million people. And we know that TAPA member companies continued to strategize on how to bring audiences in when they were not permitted to perform. Our theaters were closed for over 2 years, and many of our members pivoted, and I used the P word, they pivoted to creating online and digital performances, workshops, and interactive opportunities for their audiences to engage. What's interesting is that we are still discovering how those audiences are coming back, and if in fact some of those new members who we were able to on-ramp with with digital content, if they're actually resurfacing and coming back to live performances. TAPA supports our membership through bringing together and offering different platforms to convey all these different producers of theater and dance and opera. So we do that through a series of community meetings where we give them an opportunity to learn from each other, to have very candid conversations around some of the strategies that people might be exploring through dynamic pricing, for example, in ticketing, as well as through the industry listings, which are listed here. The acronym for that is TAPA Industry Listings, and I'll put in the chat later how you can sign up and find out a plethora of information about what's going on in our sector. We support our members through the TAPA Trade Series, which is a professional development series that offers a range of professional development with access to how to build a budget, how to do a cash flow, how do I get incorporated? I'm new to the industry. How can I find a mentor? We help you to discover places like WorkInCulture that provides those supports. The TAPA Trade Series is really popular, in particular, our In Conversation With. And the In Conversation With is a panel with a moderator talking to artistic directors, talking to playwrights, designers, which includes set, lighting, costume, sound, and video design. TAPA also supports our members through, you may have heard of the Dora Mavor Moore Awards. This is perhaps our most popular program, and the Dora Mavor Moore Awards are Canada's oldest and largest theater, dance, and opera awards show. I'm very proud of the fact that we were also one of the very first professional award shows on the planet to shift to gender inclusivity. So in our efforts to be equitable and to recognize how the work is being created on our stages, we dismantled all our gender qualified awards. So there are no longer outstanding males or outstanding females in all of the performance categories. We now simply have outstanding performance. I say simply, that's actually not true in terms of there was nothing simple about it, and it took us 3 years to create the change. I should point out that the Dora Mavor Moore Awards have been around for 42 years. So change takes time. And my organization, TAPA, the Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts, is also 42 years old. I've been the executive director for 20 years. And I have seen that change is difficult because it takes time, but I am always happy to say that we have results and we have a track record in some of the changes that we've made, in particularly through our advocacy work. We host and are the founders of Arts Day at the City, which is a municipal day of advocacy, where we have moved the needle and seen impactful change in terms of policy change at the city and funding changes to the funding agency for the City of Toronto, which is the Toronto Arts Council, and we've seen that needle move. We also offer theater careers workshops in partnership with the Toronto District School Board. And we go out into the schools, high schools and post-secondary schools, to talk about what are the opportunities to work in the arts here in the City of Toronto, where we hear that there's so much precarity for artists, so much difficulty in terms of any municipal center, but of course, I focus on Toronto in terms of paying the rent, putting food on the table, perhaps supporting a family, and working in the arts. How do we do that realistically? We try to eliminate some of the barriers for students. The next generation is critical for us in terms of building audiences of the future. So here I am going full circle back to the audience, and we offer $5 tickets for students from the ages of 14 to 29 years old, removing that economic barrier so that they can go see and attend performances that are being presented in the City of Toronto. And lastly, I'm very proud of the City Special ticketing program. And the City Special program is the program that I wanted to focus on in my conversation with you this afternoon. We offer free tickets, again, to theater, dance, and opera performances. And these tickets are distributed through agencies that serve in particular newcomers. Our focus is on making sure that traditionally excluded groups are made to feel welcome. They're invited into theaters, and we offer them the opportunity to see firsthand and experience firsthand what it's like and what's going on in Toronto. The social service agencies do not have to pay a nickel to register. There's zero cost to attend because we have the support of a very generous sponsorship through Parsai Immigration Services. And I'll talk a little bit about Al Parsai and his commitment to supporting us. The TAPA member companies allocate the inventory, and then we distribute it directly to the social service agencies. The impact is that we've allocated over 23,000 tickets, which is pretty impressive, and 8,600 folks have attended performances. We've got over 150 social service agencies that are registered and actively engaged, and 130 producing companies that offer tickets to make sure that we continue to open the door. We also have an annual event through the National Ballet of Canada, one of the institutions that is I think
How we can join?
How you can join. You can join through the social service agencies, and then the social service agencies distribute the tickets.
Where is your address?
I'm going to be able to put that, Stephanie, if you can put that in the chat for me, that would be terrific, because I can't get to the chat while I'm doing the screen. It's a great opportunity to, again,
Thanks.
Okay, you're so welcome. And it's a great opportunity to meet other people who might be working in the industry. I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues because I was given 5 minutes and I might have used up my 5 minutes. So I'm gonna pass it on. Thank you, merci, Chimigwich. Our Twitter and we're very active on Facebook, and you can sign up as well for a newsletter. So thank you so much, and I look forward to chatting a little bit more. I rushed a little bit because I wanted to get it all in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacoba. I love doing this stuff because I learn things, even though I know a lot of what TAPA is doing. I don't know everything, so some of this is new to me. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Yazmeen. Can I just remind people if they could put queries and questions in the chat? We will get to everybody at the end and have an opportunity to have some back and forthing. That was terrific. Yazmeen, who's with BIPOC TV and Film, I'm going to turn it over to you, Yazmeen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Yazmeen Kanji. My pronouns are she, her. I am a young brown woman. I have a white background behind me and an abstract artwork is behind me as well. I'm the advocacy and outreach lead at BIPOC TV and Film. So BIPOC TV and Film was founded in 2012 by writer and director Natalie Youngley. So Natalie saw that there was a big gap in our industry when it came to having support for Black, Indigenous, and people of color in this industry. So this was an acronym that was adopted to signify the need for collective action and solidarity amongst Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities fighting systemic racism and colonialism. And then in 2020, so just when the pandemic kicked off, the organization took a leap from being 100% volunteer run and a grassroots collective to a registered nonprofit, hiring its first executive director, Kadon Douglas. So who we are. So our mission is to transform the Canadian screen industry by identifying and uprooting barriers to funding, training, and employment opportunities for Black, Indigenous, and people of color creatives at all levels, in front of and behind the camera, on our sets, and in all decision-making roles. So the organization provides career training, mentorship, job access, and various other services from mental wellness and support, as well as anti-racism and anti-discrimination workplace intervention. And we work in solidarity with our community. So we work very closely with the folks that we serve. So our website is www.bipoctvandfilm.com. So you'll find a lot of resources there that I most definitely won't be able to fully dive into. So if you have a chance to look through that, I would highly encourage you to do so. So Hire BIPOC is a branch within BIPOC TV and Film. So we have a department specifically dedicated to a database where you can look through and for folks to be able to find BIPOC crew to hire. So, you know, whether you're interested in hiring BIPOC crew or whether you're interested on being a part of that database, that would be the best place to go. So one of my personal favorite resources is the Facebook group. This was actually one of the first places that really brought the community together across the country. And so I find it really exciting. It's really easy to post opportunities and to be able to comment and ask questions and just interact in a very informal, very friendly way. So I would also encourage folks to check out the page. And you know, they're very last minute posting sometimes. Sometimes it could just be, you know, needing someone on a set for a day, or it could be more of a long-term job posting. So there's, you know, and it's also just a space for people to share about, you know, even personal struggles that they might face as people of color working in this industry, and, you know, how to navigate certain conversations or certain issues that people have encountered. So I think it's a really safe and welcoming space that that we've created. So I would say the same for the Instagram page. I think our social media team prides itself on trying to be as up to date as possible with the industry opportunities within the Canadian space. and especially opportunities that are specific to Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So it's really a platform where you'll find resources that can connect you to other organizations that specialize in specific areas. So for example, we might get information sent to us from other organizations such as the Black Screen Office or the Indigenous Screen Office and so on and so forth. And then we, try to disseminate all of that information as best as possible on our social media channels. So I would also encourage following the Instagram if you're on Instagram. Posted to the feed, as you can see, upcoming industry opportunities. I believe that's an initiative that we do once a month. And then in our stories as well, there'll be daily, sometimes posts, again, for kind of sometimes last minute opportunities. So just to kind of summarize the opportunities that we currently have in place. So I think attending events is something that, is always welcome. We're starting to put together more plans for more in-person events this year, which is really exciting. We also do online panels as well. So discussions that can help folks to improve skills to enter the workforce, or we've had cinematography workshops or workshops that are more specific to a particular community. For example, we've had a conversation on Muslim representation in the film and TV industry. There's opportunities to volunteer, so perhaps assist with in-person events, and that's another great way to meet folks. Again, I'd highly encourage joining the Facebook group, as well as following on Instagram if you're able to. So upcoming engagements, so a couple of events and situations that we are planning for. So one of them would be a podcast. So we're in the early stages of developing this and hoping to launch by March. So that will be a podcast where we'll bridge conversations of advocacy work that we're doing as an organization, as well as conversations with creatives, Black, Indigenous, and people of color creatives, and figuring out how they navigated the industry and how they got to where they are right now. So we're hosting our first networking event in March. And then we'll be hosting many more throughout the years. That will just be the first of many to look out for. There's also programming and, as I mentioned, workshops for skill building. So some of those include a showrunner boot camp, as well as writing and producing labs. And sort of more down the line for the year will be a summit and a training program on anti-oppression. So I just kept it really brief. I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion. I am also a filmmaker myself, so I can also speak from personal experience on what it's like to navigate this industry. I've also worked at newcomer organizations before as well, so I do have experiences in sort of both areas. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Yazmeen. As I said before, I learned so much on these myself. Kate Douglas, BIPOC TV and Films Executive Director, is our latest board member, and I'm looking forward to learning directly from her, but certainly I'm getting a good overview with your presentation, and I look forward to learning more. Okay, we're now going to have a presentation from Flora at CARFAC. Flora, over to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm Flora, she, her pronouns. I'm calling in today from Toronto from my bedroom, which is where my work table is. So you will see behind me that there is kind of a peach wall, some plants, a light is on, and a shelf. Throughout the day, you may see my dog stand up and turn around from his nap. I am a Chinese cis woman. I have long Black hair, and I am a visual artist, but today I'm also representing CARFAC. So I'm going to do things a little bit different from my panelists, and I'm going to share a screen of our website, just because that hosts a lot of information and links, and I think it will help you find your way to this information after the session as well. Additionally, I have prepared a Google link document that the lovely staff at WorkInCulture are going to send to you with all the relevant links and some other things that I might not even get to that I think are great resources for everyone to have, as well as our contact information for CARFAC Ontario office. Okay, let me just share my screen now. Here we go. I'm just gonna shuffle some things around so I can see everything. Okay. So this is the CARFAC Ontario website. So CARFAC is the Canadian Artist Representation La Française Artiste Canadienne, Ontario. I apologize for my terrible French pronunciation. It's the Association of the Visual and Media Artists in Ontario. So we're the provincial art service organization and housed kind of umbrellaed under CARFAC National. So I'm kind of scrolling down and you can see other regional affiliates. So if you are calling from outside of Ontario and you are in these other areas, you will be able to access other CARFAC offices. And we all work with CARFAC National to help advocate for Canadian artist rights on a federal level, but also in provincial level. And I'm going to go through a little bit of some resources and examples. So our mandate and our vision is to serve or respond to the needs of our members and artists across the province. CARFAC Ontario is the, like I mentioned, the Ontario affiliate, and so we work within supporting Ontario-based artists. However, like I mentioned, we do work with national, and a lot of the work we do benefits artists from across the country. So our vision is for a vibrant, equitable, and sustainable community in which artists are properly recognized for the role we play in our society. I'm going to take you through a little bit of the history, which you find here, because I think it gives us a great context of how CARFAC operates. I do apologize. I think our website is a little slow today, of course. So if the page doesn't load, you might just have to listen to me talk instead. So it was established in 1968 by a group of visual and media artists who came together to advocate for themselves and their peers and for the industry as a whole. So starting with fair compensation, making sure that the artists were getting paid and were getting paid a fair wage or fee for their work. So it started with very grassroots and continues to use that model to advocate for a healthy and equitable and a viable industry where artists can thrive. So an example of our advocacy, and actually I'll just switch like the tab so it's easier so you don't have to wait for things to load. You can find all this information on our website. And on an advocacy area, we have a news section, and you can see different posting that shows resources, but also the work that is happening that often it feels is very invisible and maybe kind of behind the doors, but there are things that are actively in place that support artists across Canada. And one of the ones I will highlight as a great example is this PASO Coalition. Open another tag. It's a provincial arts service organization in Ontario, which CARFAC Ontario is a member of, and actually so is TAPA. And this is an example of the advocacy that we do together. We connect with other arts organizations, other associations and coalition to build and highlight the artist voice across the country to what we feel needs to be presented at a federal level. So I'll just highlight, this is long, there's about 9 different suggestions to the Ontario government, but I'll highlight a couple just to give some context to the work we do. So for example, to establish a permanent $10 million annual fund for Indigenous artists, organizations, and collectives, to increase the Ontario Arts Council budget, to ensure anti-racism and principles of fairness and justices are embedded in our provincial programs and services, and to increase investment in arts education in Ontario's publicly funded schools. Oh, and another one I like to mention is to work towards a federal basic income guarantee. So these are some examples of the work that is happening that is taking individual artist needs and bringing them together and really highlighting them and pushing forward for positive changes at a policy level. Other areas, I'll go back to the website. On our website, there are tools for artists and resources. So one of the ones that we are probably most well known for that ties back into the history is fair compensation. It is one, as I am an artist myself, and it is one that I use quite frequently to determine my fees. And if I'm working with other organizations or working within an organization, how we pay artists fairly for their work, whether you're exhibiting, whether you're hired as a presenter. And here is what it looks like. This is the CARFAC minimum recommended fee schedule. It is developed and updated by CARFAC National, but as mentioned, all of the CARFAC affiliates, including us, work with CARFAC National to discuss any changes or any adoptions to the CARFAC fee schedule. It's very lengthy and detailed, and there are different areas and different sections that may apply to your practice, to any kind of engagement you're taking. And so I highly recommend this as a tool. I'll get back to membership. So the last thing I'll touch on is membership. So membership is really what drives and allows us to advocate for artists across the province and on a national level. Being a member is one of the best ways to have your voice heard as an artist, to have that represented in all these different levels. It allows the advocacy work that we can do. And it's one of the ways you can inform cultural and economic policies. So all CARFAC Ontario members are automatically CARFAC national members. We have a really lovely long list of membership benefits and services and different engagement opportunities that I will get to as part of the panel discussion, because I don't want to repeat myself too much. So that's a quick snapshot of CARFAC, and other areas, like I said, I will expand later, and any areas that I don't get to, you will always be welcome to contact me directly. We can hop on a call and chat one-on-one and individually about specific resources that you might be looking for. So I will pass it back to Diane.
Thank you, Flora. And I just want to point out that WorkInCulture uses the fee structure in our work with artists and presenters. We're a member of PESO. In fact, I'm missing a meeting as we speak, but you can't do it all at once. So thank you. All great stuff. And as I say, I learned from each presenter. I'm going to now make a more specific question, and I'm going to reverse order. So Flora, you're going to have an opportunity to expand on what you're doing specifically. Here's the question for all three of our panelists. Please tell us about current programs you are offering that are specifically designed to help artists and creative workers who are newcomers, immigrants, and refugees to Canada. I know you've touched on some of this is an opportunity to elaborate. And I'll start with you, Flora, then Yazmeen, and then Jacoba. Flora, back to you.
Great. Yes, perfect timing in. So one of the things that I think CARFAC is really unique in is that you can always contact us for one-on-one support, one-on-one conversation, whether you're an individual artist looking for help to navigate your practice in the arts, navigating the arts landscape industry, or if you are an organization or an agency and you're looking for resources or best practices in working with artists or ways to work together, or you want to provide us feedback to bring to a advocacy level. And so that's something that I think is a really valuable resource. And there's no limits to those kinds of conversations. It could be through email, phone call, Zoom. The one thing we can't do right now is in person. We're all work from home, also because we're mandated to service the entire province. It's obviously more effective if we could do this virtually. But there are no limits to that call. We can keep having those phone calls, keep having those Zoom meetings and continue that conversation, which means we can really build a relationship and have it be tailored to your needs. So I'm actually one of the folks who does the one-on-one support. I've spoken to a lot of artists individually to help them navigate their practice, whether it's areas where they're looking for legal resources, they're trying to understand how to price work, what fees, how to advocate for themselves if they're in a situation where they feel like they're not really being valued, and just generally best practices. And it's actually one of my favorite things to do. I love the one-on-one conversation, and I love to find ways to take down those barriers to find resources and support that artists need to build their practice.
That is a terrific service, and I'm urging people on the call to write that down and take advantage of it. That's terrific, and as you say, the one-on-ones just so help build community. Yazmeen, can you elaborate on things that you're doing for newcomers?
Yeah, so I just want to say at the moment, we don't have any newcomer specific programs, but what we pride ourselves on is the fact that we serve our community regardless of their status and citizenship status. So we don't discriminate if an individual isn't on that journey of seeking status. Even it's not something that we question or anything that would prevent someone from being involved in the community. And I think what I've even as an individual, as a filmmaker, finding my way through this industry and also recognizing the barriers that a lot of newcomers face in trying to seek work generally, but specifically in the film and TV industry, is that it's really a matter of who you know, and it is a matter a lot of the times of who people will trust to hire onto certain productions or onto projects. And that is the way that it is. So for us, we try and create spaces where people can meet one another at different levels of the industry. For me, I met one of my mentors through a BIPOC TV and film program during the pandemic, where there was a sign up to speak for 15 minutes at a time with certain very high level executives and filmmakers. And so that's how I found a mentor. And I would say to just keep looking out for programs like that. We're also looking to bring back self-care Sundays. We specifically had one for the Palestinian community at a specific time. And so, sometimes it might be specific to a certain community and what we know they might be going through at a certain moment in time. But self-care Sundays is something that we're looking to bring back, where we bring in a registered psychotherapist or an expert in wellness to be in community online with folks who are just looking for a space to reflect and just work through feelings about even just the challenges of finding work. But in all of this, we really try to create spaces where people can get to learn about one another on an individual level, because we believe that those are the ways that even professional connections can be formed. And I highly encourage, like I said, to keep track of all of the social media, because I would say that's where a lot of opportunities are going to arise.
That's great, and I think that self-care part of our community is very important. In combination with the individual contacts and building your individual network, but certainly I'm not sure if other sectors do as much as we are doing, but I've seen a lot in the self-care area, which I think is so important coming out of the pandemic, always, but coming out of the pandemic perhaps doubly so. Jacoba, would you like to elaborate on some of the wonderful programs you're doing? I thought that City Special was just amazing. So over to you.
Yeah, we're thanks, Diane. And I'm so impressed with hearing what Yazmeen and Flora are doing. We are conscious of the struggles, again, in terms of access to the arts for new Canadians coming into the city of Toronto. And the way that the City Special works is because of the generous support of Parsai Immigration Services. So I just wanted to give them a little bit of context. I think it's important when people are looking for folks to partner with in the industry, that the casting of who you're partnering with and who you're approaching to provide the financial support is part of the success story. And Al Parsai, who is the CEO of Parsai Immigration Services, he's a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and he's represented literally hundreds of clients from more than 35 countries coming into into Canada, specifically into Toronto, in terms of immigration process through both federal and provincial levels. He's been doing that since 2011. So I like to think of him as a bit of an expert. He also teaches in terms of helping others to understand immigration consultation to those who might want to become future immigration consultants. And he helps folks with their visas, with work permits, with study permits for a lot of artists who are coming into the country. He's a real clearinghouse in a very authentic and professional way for immigration and citizenship for artists to Canada. So he's the perfect partner for us. And we are happy to spotlight him. He speaks at our AGM. He's been a featured speaker for part of the TAPA Trade series. So whenever we can help to amplify Parsai Immigration Services, it's a give and take relationship in terms of that city special. Another thing that we do is we work very closely. TAPA's strength is built on our committee structure. There's myself and only 2 other full-time employees. People think we're a large institution, and they're always surprised when they find out there are only 3 people at TAPA. And we accomplish this through our committee structure. We have a social justice committee, and the manner and the spirit with which we work through that social justice committee is about continually engaging in conversations with our community that can help to benefit and specifically focusing on issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And we're committed to think and work through the lens of mental health. And this is something that has become, Yazmeen, you mentioned that as well, and it's become something across all sectors facing mental health challenges as a result of the pandemic. And we're looking at trying to create systemic change that will support intergenerational conversations between mentors and younger people, so that there's an opportunity for intergenerational learning, which I think is a really important place to start unpacking and understanding what locally is facing artists, what's facing artists who are coming into our country and into our city, who might be coming here from another city from within the country, and how we can have deeper conversations about anti-racism, anti-oppression in the performing arts. And we've been doing that in another partnership with CPAMO, which is the Cultural Pluralism in the Arts Movement of Ontario. And we've offered free access to anti-racism workshops that included a range of topics for an entire year. They were held online, not the best way to engage conversations, but yet another entry point for people to come in.
Thanks, Jacoba. So we've talked about specific problems, specific programs that each of you are offering, targeting newcomer immigrant Canadians. But you all work in your own sort of discipline, and you undoubtedly know of other programs that are being offered. And I wondered if you could share with us programs that are either specifically geared to newcomers or more general programs that you think would be beneficial for people to know about. And why don't we mix it up? I'll start with you, Yazmeen.
Sure. Well, and this is just off the bat. I haven't done deep research, but where I used to work, I worked at Matthew House, Matthew Refugee House in Toronto. I'm not sure if anyone on the call is familiar with them. They do really great work. And I know that on occasion they will have certain sessions of getting to meet folks in the broader community. Who will work with them and kind of connect them with the newcomers that they serve. So I know that they're really great to get in touch with. I also have previously worked at Jumpstart Refugee Talent, where they had a database of mentors who are willing to work one-on-one with newcomer mentees to bring them into that field and show them the ropes and how that field works, you know, in this country specifically. So I think initiatives like that are really important to look out for, is, you know, those one-on-one mentorships. I think if you already have a specific area that you come with and you would like to continue working in that area, I would suggest, you know, seeking out mentorships and seeking out people who are willing to show you the way that that works here and getting you connected with networks here so that you can continue to do that work as well.
Always good advice, so important. Flora, what about you?
Yes, I'm going to share a couple. So there's one, and actually it's a collaboration with us, so it kind of is still CARFAC relevant, but we work with ALAS, Artist Legal Advice Services, and it's actually part of my role is to coordinate between the two, and that offers a free artist legal clinic, as well as we're working on different events like webinars, closed door roundtable discussions, or consultations with artists or arts organizations, collectives, and public panels that address specific issues. And in that model, we're able to take different, you know, whether it's practices or industry issues such as like pay equity or discrimination, and able to build out these conversations and have them available for the public. Or if they're closed door discussions, we then take that information and build out a resource that would help artists or different creatives who to navigate their practice. And that is a great resource because, as a reminder, CARFAC is a visual artist and media specifically, but ALAS, Artist Legal Advice Services, otherwise known as ALAS, they service all creative. So as long as you're in a creative practice, and you could be a worker in the industry, so not necessarily an artist, then you are eligible to be in a clinic, as well as you'll benefit from all these resources. They have great things like information about copyright and different a database for that. And so that is pretty exciting, and is actually quite new for CARFAC for us to find different ways and models of bringing artists into conversation as we move forward. But there are other resources that I would recommend looking at. So for example, Neighborhood Arts Network has an amazing program and grant funding. It's called Newcomer Arts Award and Newcomer Space Award. In addition to that, they do a lot of really lovely like networking opportunities that bring together a community of artists. And they have a really wide network. And because they've been offering the Newcomer Arts Award for many, many years, there's also an amazing network of newcomer artists who do come together and support each other. And I think that part is probably one of the most important things, is to have that shared experience. And that's something I really recommend looking at. And then also just having a look at the lassos. So the local art service organization, sorry, brain farted for that moment. And these are amazing art service organizations that are in different areas of the GTA that have been identified as having gaps to services for underserved communities, specifically around the arts. And there's always great programming that they host. And Scarborough Arts, for example, has like a large community of newcomer artists. And even if you're not, you don't identify as being an artist, but you're just interested in exploring what that might mean, for you as a career to pursue, then that is a great area. And there's always great workshops if it's just like you want to explore a creative workshop, or you're looking into entrepreneurship. You're wondering about, you know, what about taxes? What about business? How do I approach marketing, for example? And that is one of the things I love about the LASSOs. And they have programming for like children all the way to seniors. And I think once again, also really exciting part that you could be of any age entering into the arts and experiencing it in the way you want.
Yeah, those are great resources. We've worked with the neighborhood arts associations and the local arts associations, and this really gets down to grassroots, really community oriented, and the emphasis on being able to actually interact with people is marvelous. Really good suggestions. And back to you, Jacoba.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Balancing Act, which is an organization that was only founded in 2019. I sit on the steering committee of Balancing Act in full transparency, and they were created to effect change and to increase access to employment for caregivers that are working in the performing arts. So what does that mean? As a caregiver, and this is especially for newcomers who are coming in with, facing situations where you might be taking care of young children or babies, or the other opposite side of that is elder care. And working in the performing arts in Canada and taking care of little ones or elderly is a real challenge. And Balancing Act is advocating for greater equality and accessibility and inclusion in the workforce for artists who are caregivers working in the arts. The day-to-day challenges of working in rehearsals and production schedules that don't have any flexibility. There's an inability for artists to attend networking events that have just been described by some of my colleagues on this panel. There's an inability for artists to access the Fabulous City Special program because there's a barrier to childcare because they don't have a sufficient income to pay for childcare. So the traditional models of arts production in conjunction with a lack of awareness and the stigma means that so many voices are not around the table right now that are populating our stages or that are engaged in arts work. And Balancing Act is this program that supports artists, arts workers, as well as arts organizations. And they have a number of programs that they're starting to roll out that will hopefully have an impact and affect change in terms of how artists are engaging with families, if you've got one. I think it's really important to acknowledge this kind of silent part of, I know artists who now say to me, I live in Toronto, I'm an artist, and I can't afford to have a family here. So it's a real issue around, again, affordability and the precarity of being an artist, and how I feel that we have a responsibility to support and find new arteries of support around that.
That is a wonderful way to wrap up, Jacoba. We promised our audience that we would leave some time for questions directly from them. And I'm going to turn it over to Steph at this point, who is going to issue some formal thanks. But I'm going to give you my thanks. This has been just incredible. I think we could continue talking for the rest of the day if we had the time. But I will turn it back to you, Steph, with my huge appreciation to you all.
Thank you, Diane, for moderating, and I also echo that great thanks to our panelists for sharing your offerings and insights into this area of support for newcomers. And I think what we really accomplish when we do these types of sessions is convey the truly diverse range of opportunities and entry points there are into the arts as a career, while Also acknowledging that there is a lot one might need to know, and it's not always clear in terms of how to navigate those pathways and how to connect to the networks that could provide that support. So I thank you all for helping us create that, that baseline today. And at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the recording.